Hi everyone, my name is Annie, and I would like to read you all a chapter from my book that I recently published last year on Amazon called Wildmoore Wrath of Zane. I've never really done this before, so I apologize in advance for having a little difficulty of reading, so bear with me. Prologue, a contemplation to destroy. The land of Wildmoore was a place where humans and animals with the ability to speak were able to coexist, and magic played a part in bringing peace to both species. The land full of animals with many special abilities as well as serving an important purpose. Within the northwest, and there was a large rocky cave that inhabits a polar bear accustomed to see the past, present, and future. Red pandas, throughout time, serves as a messenger for the Wildmoore Kingdom's king and queen. Wolves were loyal companions to the kingdom's forest knights to ward off intruders. Orangutans, wise beyond their years, served as advisors for all female forest warriors. Gray-horned owls that were the size of Clydesdale horses, but served as night patrol and to see activity up in the sky. Lions protected their own realm and prides located in the southeast, but often assisted humans in upcoming wars caused by evil. And finally, according to legend, there were guardian dragons spiritually connected to a human and immediately bonded with those with a similar mark they were born with. However, despite Wildmoore being filled with good-natured animals and people, there was also an overlooking darkness led by the Dark Warlocks. It is unknown when the Warlocks showed up, or what their motive was to cause harm to every living thing in Wildmoore. But they were callous, as they were soulless. The Warlocks had their place of sanctuary that was located beyond the borders of Wildmoore that no human or animal would dare to cross. Shadowy Rock Palace. The Shadowy Rock Palace was made with an unusually black brick twisted together with vines and rotting tree branches, but the inside of it was far more sinister. Despite being built with bricks, the castle looked like it was about to crumble apart, making the structure completely unstable as cracks and chips of broken brick were on the floor of the palace's grand hall. There were cobwebs in every corner. The long black and silver carpet in the grand hall was ripped to shreds, bird droppings on the floor left by the ravens that often flew in and out of the palace. And lastly, there was a portrait of an elderly white man with a long graying black beard, wearing a dark cloak and wore a permanent scowl on his face. Deeper into the palace, there's a conference room consisting of only an oval table made of a rotting tree trunk, 20 black chairs surrounding it, a perch for the ravens, and a stone-cold cauldron with bubbling water consisting of a see-all spell, overlooking the entire kingdom of Wildmoore, and witnessing the aquatic vision. The aquatic imagery was the most sinister warlock beyond the years of Wildmoore, Zane. Zane is an African-American man with black hair done into a buzz cut, brown eyes that couldn't be any darker than they already were, and dons a similar cloak of the original Dark Warlock in the portrait from the Grand Hall. Zane also carries a wooden staff made with small branches unusually twisted with a metal bar. And on top of the staff is a silver black crystal containing threading magic he could use in his power. And lastly, he wore a ring on his right hand with a black crystal. Although the ring's crystal has no power, it serves as a sentimental value from his past, a past he refused to mention. He stared at the bubbling water in his cauldron, and all he could see was two of the female warrior women, and a baby wrapped in a knitted light green baby blanket, escaping from the massacre Zane and his men had caused 13 years ago. All explosion from the impact of fireballs thrown by himself and 3 of the other warlocks, using a telekinetic spell to choke the life out of 5 forest warriors, stab half of the lions from the lion realm, and worst of all, skinned 4 wolves as they were trying to protect their masters. While seeing their deaths was nothing but satisfying to Zane, he looked angered, as the 3 people he targeted, including the newborn child, had gotten away, and he and his men were wanted for mass murder. The reason Zane wanted a newborn child dead was due to the prophecy made by one of the fortune-telling polar bears. According to the prophecy, a child by a forest warrior and knight will grow to defeat the dark warlocks, and the Wildmoore kingdom will finally be at peace once again. Zane's train of thought about the prophecy was interrupted by his right-hand man, Maurice, who had just returned. Like Zane, he wore a black cloak, but he was Caucasian with shoulder-length black hair, brown eyes, and a large scar on his right eyebrow from the previous war the dark warlocks had declared 13 years back. "How was the weather outside the borders?" Zane asked Maurice, not breaking his concentration from the cauldron. "Exhausting. So is the disgusting people down there," Maurice sneered. Suddenly, a raven flew in and took his seat on the perch before he said, "I tried to get a good look at the forest warriors' camp, but I almost lost the wing after one of them tried to put an arrow through it." "Just be lucky those savages of warriors don't try to cook you over a fire, bra," Zane said, his tone very distracted as his eyes still looked on at the images from the 13-year-old war. Maurice had been Zane's right-hand man for his 12 years after his family from the Podwood village shunned him when he began to display dark magic. This kind of neglect was what made Maurice break away and join the Dark Warlocks and whatever sinister plan they had planned to involve Wildmoore and his people. He peered over Zane's shoulder to look at the bubbling water showing their warlocks' destruction on Wildmoore, and how many people they all had slaughtered, while also seeing 2 female forest warriors getting away with a newborn baby girl in one of their arms. Already knowing what his sinister colleague was thinking, Maurice said, "We will find the girl, Zane, and she will perish as the previous villagers did 13 years ago. As much as I appreciate your words of encouragement, the girl is nowhere to be found. I have checked every nook and cranny of the kingdom, but have found absolutely nothing, because the 2 women got away with the newborn and hid at a rather good hiding place that I just can't seem to find," Zane said. After the see-all spell in the cauldron water ended, Zane turned to Maurice with Brom squawking, "Are you still angry about what one of those women did to you?" Angry that the dim-witted raven brought up that topic, Zane turned to the raven and flicked his wrist to telekinetically knock over the perch that Brom was sitting on. Thankfully, the bird was able to fly off before he went down with the perch. Zane angrily yelled at his feathered companion, "Do not bring that up again, you bird-brained imbecile!" Brom flew to a ledge nearby and cowered. He immediately knew better than to be exposed to Zane's bad side. Maurice took a step back as he saw the look in Zane's eyes. A look of anger and vengeance that would be too impossible to ignore. Hoping to diffuse his colleague's anger, Maurice advised, "Sir, there's no reason for you to blow up. Besides, what did one of those women do to you that made you want to murder them, including the child?" Zane took a deep breath and walked over to the table that held a dead white rose tied in a black ribbon, and a letter slightly torn and yellowed through time. Those two items were kept in a sealed glass case on the table that only Zane was allowed to get access to, because it was something that was particularly close to him, and it served as a reminder of how he became who he was now. A long time ago, when I was a child, I met this girl in the village, and she was a breath of fresh air. She was so kind and beautiful, which all the more reason all the villagers loved her. I was quite taken by her charm, and we began a friendship. Later on, I decided to develop romantic feelings, so much so that I found a white rose that I had tied with a black ribbon, and wrote her a letter that reflected how I felt about her. So I left those things at her cottage and went back to my mother, who had been teaching me magic spells. Then the next morning, I was visited by the girl and returned both the flower and the letter, saying that my gesture was kind, but revealed that she does not feel the same way about me, because she only sees me as a friend, and she's in love with someone else. A forced knight in training. At first, I was heartbroken that my love for her was rejected. I tried thinking of ways to make her fall in love with me, even if it meant using spells that my mother would never approve of. I created a love potion, so I could give it to the village girl, and planned to give it to her at the village square, which is where I asked her to meet me. But everything fell apart when one of the villagers found out that my mother was a witch, and took her to the village square where they had tied her to a wooden stake and placed dry wood and hay around in a circle as they were about to burn her to death. One of the villagers had seen the vial of the love potion that I possessed and assumed it was my mother who made it, and attempted to give it to a man in the village. The person who had found it was the girl's father, and took my mother to the burning stake. I knew it must have been that girl's fault, as her father had killed my mother out of cold blood. The final straw was when that girl had become a forest warrior and married that horrid forest knight. And because of that anger building within me, my magic became dark. And I fled to this lovely manor before the villagers tried to burn me as well. It's because of my mother's death that the Paulwood village deserves to burn as she did. And once I found out that the girl had a child destined to defeat us all, the child will be the first to die, along with her dreadful and traitor of a mother. Maurice had never heard such a story like this, but it certainly had given him a chilling sensation as he understood why Zane was the way he was now. "With all due respect, sir, The child and its mother were already long gone after the massacre we have caused. They did not return to Wildmoore shortly after that, Maurice said, as Zane turned back to face his sinister colleague. Of course they will, Maurice, and when they do, they would feel our wrath, and we will bring this world to its knees, Zane snarled, and his plan for Wildmoore's domination was beginning to be at play. He knew that wherever the destined child had gone after his previous attempt to take over Wildmoore, Zane was determined to not fail this time, and he would violently murder anyone that got in his way. At the very center of Wildmoore Kingdom, there stood a castle made of woven branches of a redwood tree, the only redwood tree that lived in Wildmoore, and it magically knitted itself into the Wildmoore Kingdom's castle that everyone knew today. Inside, the castle was much nicely prepared and organized than it was at the Shadowy Rock Palace. The castle was filled with paintings of kings and queens who had ruled the kingdom throughout time in the Great Hall, and tables on each side of the hall with beautiful, vibrant flowers blooming from the sunlight through the intertwined branches of the legal but an optimistic sign of the kingdom. The throne room was the most frequently known place in the castle, where the throne, unlike anything else in the castle, was made of light gray riverbank rocks. And the rim of the throne was made with found feathers of the now extinct bird known as the firebird. However, the throne room only had one inhabitant, Queen Harley of Wildmoore. Queen Harley was a beautiful woman with long raven-black hair that reached her waist, and the most striking feature of her hair was something she was born with, a vibrant red streak parted on the right side of her hair. The queen wore a lovely pale lavender robe with soft faux fur cuffs on the sleeves, and wore her mother's red crystal necklace. Long before her, Queen Harley's mother ruled the Wildmoore Kingdom with such grace and kindness, but her demise was sudden 13 years ago, when the Dark Warlocks attack, and Zane was the first to kill the queen, leaving Harley to assume the throne. Queen Harley, much like everyone else in Wildmoore and the Paulwood village, was well aware of the legend of the child who would defeat the Dark Warlocks, but also understood that the child vanished in the midst of the barbaric chaos. Despite the disappearance of the child, as well as the child's mother and aunt, Queen Harley had hope as she looked on to view the kingdom and the village from the throne room's large window. Walking into the throne room was Queen Harley's husband, King Ulrich. The king was a handsome man, with black hair and blue-green eyes, who wore a dark purple robe, and on his left hand wore a copper rose ring with an emerald crystal. He saw his wife looking in the window with a concerned look on her face, and King Ulrich asked, "Are you feeling alright, my beloved?" From the moment he and Queen Harley met, King Ulrich knew what his wife was thinking concerning either the kingdom or the village, but he knew there was something else that was bothering her. He loved her despite her growing up in a castle while he grew up in the village. But since Wildmoore was an equal land of all people and animals, King Ulrich fell in love with Queen Harley with no limitations or rules of her being married to another royal figure instead. Queen Harley answered her husband, her brown eyes still staring at the view of the village. I am concerned that they will attack again. You mean the Dark Warlocks? King Ulrich asked, causing his wife to finally look at him. And he replied, trying to ease his wife's uncertainties. My love, the Dark Warlocks have imposed an attack for 13 years. And were banished to the Shadowy Rock boundaries. Doesn't mean that they will return once again. And the prophecy says that a child bred from a forest knight and a forest warrior possessed with a powerful light crystal that can defeat Zane and his men. But how would that happen if the child, along with her mother and aunt, are no longer in this world? Queen Harley asked, her tone sounding frustrated. I'm sure wherever they are now, it was somewhere safe. And when the time finally will come, the child will come and overpower the evil that Zane has brought to our world, King Ulrich said. Queen Harley knew she had faith that wherever the child had gone, she was somewhere safe from harm's way. But she couldn't help but feel uncertain of the child's fate after the war 13 years passed. Suddenly, in hopes of cheering up his wife, King Ulrich asked, "Do you remember the day the child was born?" Queen Harley softly smiled at the memory and said, "How could I forget? It was early morning, and one of our very own forest warriors delivered a lovely little girl. My mother and I were the last to visit the forest, and Mama gifted the mother a rose quartz crystal containing the ability to control light as a sign of hope, and it will soon be passed on to her daughter for a battle yet to come." It was a lovely ceremony before Zane went to attack the village and slaughter everyone in their path, including my mother. King Ulrich gently pulled in his wife for a hug and whispered in her ear, "Have faith, my love. The child will return here, and she will defeat Zane and his army once more." Okay, that's the prologue. I hope you guys enjoy it, and I apologize again for my difficulty of reading, but I hope you guys really, really enjoy it. If you would like to have a copy, you can go on Amazon and type in the title right here. And if you guys want to hear more of this book, leave a comment down below. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye!